our Time Magazine contributor, Omar Waraich. He's, as I mentioned, live on the phone from Abbottabad, Pakistan, where that raid on Osama bin Laden's compound took place. And Omar, as I mentioned, you've been walking around the city talking with several eyewitnesses. What have they told you about what happened last night?
Well, they were all quite startled last night as suddenly they heard two gunship helicopters swoop in. One of the eyewitnesses I spoke to actually saw them come into the center of town and head towards Bilal town, which is a middle-class neighborhood in the heart of Abbottabad. Subsequently, they heard a huge explosion, which rattled windows, shook people, was felt as far as within a 6-kilometer radius. At this point, people weren't sure what had happened, and then later, people who actually lived closer to the target within the neighborhood said that it was one of the helicopters having crashed. It's a very quiet town, as I said, and so it's not unusual for them to actually have anything remotely like this. This is actually a part of Pakistan that has been relatively immune to suicide bombings and terrorism as well. So many residents came out onto the streets in panic, didn't know what was happening. One young eyewitness, a student, said to me that he was worried that they were being invaded. When they rose the next morning and put on their television sets and realized what had happened and who had been killed and who had been their neighbor since at least last summer, those feelings of shock quickly translated into utter bewilderment and incredulity. They asked themselves, well, how was it that this person was? No one I spoke to said that they'd come across him before, right. and some simply couldn't believe that this could be the case.
Omar, and I sense that we may be about to lose you again, but why the fact that this town, was sort of under the radar? I mean, that must have been what appealed to Osama bin Laden.
Well, there's the interesting thing about this town, it is a sleepy garrison town. The interesting thing is it has a very big military presence. It has a base. It has a military academy, Pakistan's equivalent of West Point, and it has sensitive installations nearby. So it is interesting that despite the high-profile military presence there, his own presence went unnoticed. On the other hand, it is a very quiet place. It's distant to the tribal areas along the Afghan border. It's not affected by militancy, and it's not one of the big cities. So in some ways, it is actually a good place to be able to hide and evade the notice of people who would be looking in the more obvious places in Pakistan.
Okay. Omar, thank you very much. Omar Waraich from Time Magazine.